thought I was incapable of running. Like I in my brain, like my body just couldn't run. I don't know how to run. I can't run. I can't run around the block. At the time, I was going to pick classes, high intensity interval training. Um, and Brian was coming with me, and he was like, "You can run a mile. Like if you can finish one of these classes, you can run a mile."
He was kicking my ass in those classes.
And I'm like, "Yeah." So I was on my way to the boardwalk, and I was like, "I'm gonna try." And he's like, "Just run a mile." I'm like, "Okay." So I walked a half a mile to warm up, and I set my watch to run. And in my brain, I'm like, I'm just gonna go a mile. I could do a mile, and I very slowly, like a 15-minute pace, very slowly. Start running up the boardwalk, and I see the bathrooms up ahead, and I had to use the restroom, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get to the bathrooms and stop there, which happened to be exactly a mile. I stopped. My legs felt like lead weights, like they were so heavy, it was ridiculous. I went in, it's the ladies' room, come out, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna walk a half a mile in the same direction, like away from where my car is. I walk another half mile, and I'm like, my legs are feeling all right. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna jog back. I jog back a mile and a half back to where I started to jog originally, and then walk the last half mile back to my car. And I couldn't believe that, like, I just jogged 2.5 miles. So I was like, I'm gonna, because I'm crazy. I was like, I'm gonna sign up for a marathon. And I signed up for the Philadelphia Marathon, and I started a training routine on an app, and I built up every week more and more miles, more and more miles. And then like a month before the marathon, I got scared. I had limits, and I said, "Oh, I can't do a full marathon. I'm just going to do a half." So I went online. I switched it to a half marathon. 2 weeks later, one of Brian's friends isn't going to do the New York City Marathon and was like, "Hey, I have a tag for the New York City Marathon," which is like literally bucket list for me because I'm a New York girl, right? So I'm like, I have to take this. Like, I can't not do this. So I get the tag from him. I go to the marathon, and I didn't know if I could finish, but I knew I was going to die trying, right? So I started off, and he was a fast runner, so I was in an early pack. They all passed me. I had the Verrazano Bridge to myself. Um, and I'm just going, and the next pack gets released, and they're passing me, and I'm just like, I have all day. I'm just gonna do this. And my brain, I think it was like what, mile 8, my legs started cramping. So I started taking salt at every mile because they had salt packets. And I just kept telling myself, like, you're just gonna just keep going, just keep going. Just if you have to walk, you walk. And then like I think it's mile like 16, you cross the Queensboro Bridge, and at that point everybody's walking. I don't care who they were. It's 60 miles in, it's uphill, it's dreadful. There's no crowd around you, and everybody got quiet. But as you're coming over that bridge into First Avenue, you hear the crowd like, oh, and that was my fastest mile, right? That was the fastest mile of the marathon. I was like, I flew through mile 17, and then I just kept going. Mile 22, my hips felt like they were gonna like block and just drop out. And I just kept going. 8 hours later, I finished that. I crossed that finish line, and I honestly thought, like, I just started immediately crying. It was just like, oh my goodness, like I didn't even think I could run 6 months ago. And now I just did the New York City Marathon. Yeah, it took me 8 hours. I'm not saying I ran the whole thing, but I was positively self-talking to myself throughout the whole thing. It was I had there was a verse that played in my head. I think it's Isaiah 40, where it's like, you run and not get weary, you walk and not get faint, or you walk and not get weary and you run. And every time I started to get tired, I would say that verse to myself and just keep going and keep going. And it was me talking to myself and him talking to me, because he was constantly my cheerleader through the whole thing, that got me to the end. But it my mind, by all means, did not think I could do that. But I pushed through, and I finished.
I won't even try and top that story. Just being on the other end of that and being her coach throughout it, and knowing how much you can limit yourself. It's amazing what you can accomplish so long as you're, again, using positive self-talk to get yourself through there, and have sometimes an external source remind
Yes, he was.
how strong you can actually be and whatever your goals are.